to direct all the resident electoral commissioners to forward the results as declared to INEC headquarters for purposes of issuing the certificate of return to all the people that validly and legitimately won the elections. In relation to this, we don't want to make any mistakes because we had to get a brief. We had to get a brief from the resident electoral commissioners. In some places, election was postponed because they were inconclusive. And in some of these places, we have to go back and conclude the elections that were inconclusive. In some places, there were some infractions, there were some challenges. And you know that in some of the states, some of the returning officers were intimidated. So the commission, as a commission, must take a position in relation to some of those areas. So in the next few days, we have a period of 7 days within which to do all these things, within which to issue certificate of return to those who were validly and legitimately returned. And then we are going to publish all the results in the INEC website. But
you already have the results of the presidential election.
Yes.
And that is within your purview.
I've not checked the website to know why it has not been published.
Okay.
Yes.
Please kindly help us check. And let us know why it has not been published.
Definitely I will check. Yes.
But tell us about the supplementary elections. The INEC, national chairman did come out to say that INEC was going to conduct supplementary polls.
Yes.
First and foremost, to what effect is that? And what's that about?
I think that there was some misreading of the press statement which the commission issued immediately after the meeting with the resident electoral commissioners. The supplementary elections we talked about relates only to National Assembly elections. That is senatorial elections and House of Representative elections. In places where the returning officers or the collation officers declared the elections inconclusive, in which case it is either the margin of lead principle was affected or the people did not satisfy the constitutional requirement for being declared as the winners of the election. So it is only in those areas that we are going to conduct supplementary elections. And let me give you an example. For instance, in Rivers, there were places like in Bonne and some other places where we could not deploy on account of insecurity. In those places, the total number of votes from those places definitely will affect the final outcome of the elections. So in those places, we are going to move back and go and conduct elections.
Of which elections?
The National Assembly elections. There's no issue with the presidential elections. Nobody is conducting any supplementary election in relation to presidential elections because before the declaration and return was made in relation to the presidential election, the issue of council votes and void votes and so on and so forth had already been taken into consideration, and it was not going to affect the margin of lead between the person who was declared as the winner of the elections and return and the person following. So there's no issue in relation to that. The places where we are going to conduct supplementary elections relates only to places, relates to states where National Assembly elections were declared inconclusive. We had inconclusive elections in places like Rivers. We had inconclusive elections in places in Abia, in places in Imo State, and in some other places. Those are the places where we are going to, and in Lagos, those are the places where we are going to conduct supplementary elections before we can make a return in relation to some senatorial seats and some seats in the House of Representatives.
Okay, yes. So that has to do with just national... They're going to take place alongside the governorship elections and the state houses of assembly elections?
Yes, in places where we are confident that it can take place without any challenges. But if there are other places where we feel it is the insecurity or the challenges that led to not conducting elections in those areas still persist, we may have to reconsider conducting elections simultaneously with the governorship elections in those places. But what the decision of the commission is that we are going to conduct these elections, these supplementary elections, together with the governorship and state assembly elections.
Well, quite a number of people are still not happy with in terms of how INEC deployed for the elections.
Yes.
There are a lot of, it would seem that people arrived, the election officials arrived late to polling stations.
Yes.
People were already waiting for them.
Yes.
Some people were confused as to where their polling units were. They were not quite sure. They voted in a certain place in 2015. By 2019, it had been moved somewhere else. Why did INEC have to create, you would say, some of these bottlenecks for people not to understand? Because even some of the electoral officers did not know where they were supposed to have gone to. There was some confusion in some polling units as to where they ought to be. You know, that happened here in Abuja, where some people went to, was it Total or AYA, and they were supposed to be somewhere else. There was some confusion. What has caused all of this confusion?
Well, let me just say this. The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission has acknowledged that we had some challenges in terms of deployment on election day. And some of these challenges were challenges that we thought we had overcome. One, as I pointed out, the conduct of elections is a multi-stakeholder venture. And it's like a chain. The moment there's a small challenge with the chain, you have a problem. Before you can deploy in an election, you must get the cooperation of all the security agencies. You must also make sure that your transportation arrangement is perfect and that it's not sabotaged. You must also make sure that all the people that have been trained in terms of the performance of ad hoc duties report on time. What the Commission has done over the years is to establish what we call the RACs. This is registration area centers that are closer to the polling units, so that by 5 a.m. in the morning, those that are nearby can even walk to their polling units. And then the vehicles will convey those who are slightly far from the polling units to their polling units, so that by 8 o'clock, voting will start. And by 7 o'clock, they're already set up. But, you know, due to a few challenges, we had challenges with some of the ad hoc staff arriving to their registration areas on time. Sometimes, because of security challenges, we had to wait for the security agencies to arrive before we can deploy. And some of the security agencies need to be sure that the places where they are moving to is properly secured. And then we also had a few challenges relating to ink pad, a few challenges relating to the voters register and so on and so forth. But we are not making excuses for ourselves. Some of these things could have just been taken on board and addressed frontally before the deployment. So we recognize the fact that our deployment plan did not work out 100% the way we wanted it. Because our projection was that we were going to have at least 90% deployment and 90% opening of polls by 8. Yes. But it didn't work out.
You also saw, you know, the deployment as released by observers who said that, you know, even the deployment was not done equally in many areas. In some regions, they believe that there was, or their figures show that there could have been some systematic disenfranchisement of voters in certain regions above others. I mean, or below others, depends on how you look at it. What does INEC make of this? I don't know whether you're privy to some of this, the deployment statistics of some of these observer missions who looked at it and said in some areas it was far lower than expected, and in some other areas it was far higher than expected. What do you make of it?
The Independent National Electoral Commission has its own situation room, and we look at these statistics.
Go ahead, please.
We get our own statistics from the field. Our own statistics indicates that at least 60% of the polls opened by 8. And then by 12 noon, we had almost over 90% deployment. Now, the issue is that there was no systematic disenfranchisement or lower deployment in terms of some regions or in terms of some states. What happened was that...
But you did hear about that report?
Of course, we hear a lot of things. We are the ones who have over 170,000 presiding officers in all the polling units in the country. And the moment polls open in any place, we know. So we have to rely on our own rather than relying on the report of a group that deployed only 2,000 observers in over 150,000 or over 170,000 polling units throughout the country. So the issue is that we acknowledge that there were delays and we are making very serious efforts to make sure that some of those challenges that led to the delay does not occur or does not happen again in relation to the governorship and state assembly elections.
Well, we do hope that you'll be correcting some of the lapses that were noticed, you know, during the presidential elections. One other thing that some people will ask is about this text message that the polling unit officers were supposed to have sent to INEC situation room, and how the results were, you know, ought to have been collated far faster than we saw. What do you have to say about that?
No. The collation of results is backed by law. The law, as it is today, says that the moment polls close in any polling unit, that the presiding officer must sort out the votes and count the votes and record the scores of the candidates in Form EC 8A and also in Form EC 60E, and then carry the smart card reader together with the forms to the registration area collation center. And these things are done manually, and that the registration area collation officer must also collate the results manually. The text message people are talking about is supposed to be a facility or a device built into the smart card reader that will enable us to collate and transmit results electronically if the law is changed. But the state of the law as of today is if the law is changed, yes.
We thought it was a backup. I mean, we also thought it was to protect your collation officers or the officials of INEC who are going to be at the poll. So in areas where you have intimidation, for instance, and the officer has to record 0, for instance, and that would have been transmitted to INEC office. If there are any changes, that was what we were told before the elections. If there are any changes, INEC should be able to question and say, but this was not what you sent earlier. Why the changes? Isn't that what it was supposed to be?
The INEC situation room and the INEC national commissioners do not collate results at the national level in terms of even National Assembly elections. The results are collated at the registration area by the collation officers. It is the collation officer at the registration area that receives the smart card reader, looks at the figure recorded in the smart card reader, then looks at from EC8A and looks at the figure collated there, together with the party agents at the collation center. And then if there's any discrepancy, the collation officer tries to understand why the discrepancy should occur, and then makes up his mind on what to do in relation to that particular discrepancy.
Are we misunderstanding what Mr. Mahmoud Yakubu, are we misunderstanding what he said? Because he was talking about them transmitting the text message, that the smart card reader had the ability to be able to send that as a text message of some sort. He talked about how, you know, network was going to be a challenge in some areas, but that the areas were very, very minute. And now you're telling us that it was for the collation officer? No.
I think you are misunderstanding it. The issue is this: we are supposed to, if the law was changed, we will transmit, we will collect and transmit electronically. But because the law remains the law as it is today, what we did was a pilot, and what we've been doing is a pilot. And in that particular pilot, there were still some black spots where network has not covered. It is those areas that he was talking about. But as of today, we are only empowered to transmit manually, and that is the law.
No, we sincerely hope that, you know, we get better results. I mean, by better results, I mean better deployment and, you know, correction of challenges during the governorship and National Assembly, State House of Assembly elections. But some people will definitely hope to see, they want to have more confidence in the electoral umpire. But we have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily. Mr. Festus Okoye is the National Commissioner for Voter Education, and he works with the Independent National Electoral Commission. Sunrise Daily continues in a moment. Please stay with us.